Hello, I'm First Officer Jim Watkins, Vice Chairman of the Pilot-to-Pilot Committee. With me today is Captain Chuck Dyer, Chairman of our MEC, and Captain Rich Hughey, Chairman of the ALPA President's Committee for Cargo. Gentlemen, thank you for coming.
You bet, Jim.
Chuck, you've been working a lot of safety issues lately. Could you expand on that for us, please?
Yeah, Jim, that's come about through a confluence of issues. Early on, after I was elected a year or so ago, I started hearing some statistics that Rich was talking about on looking at passenger safety as opposed to cargo safety. And one of the things that Rich stated that caught my attention was that were you to apply the passenger safety record to the cargo segment of our flying in the United States, what you'd come up with is one major accident every 30 years. But were you to do the other way, if you were to bring the cargo accident rate to the passenger side of the flying, to that sector, which is a large sector, 93%, you're talking about 360 accidents in 30 years, the same 30 years that developed one accident when you put the stat the other way. So the imbalance here is extraordinary. And this is the challenge. So we're trying to get at why such a radical disparity between cargo and passenger flying.
Rich, can you offer any additional insight into safety?
Sure, Jim. ALPA has long advocated for one level of safety because we fly into the same airports, using the same airspace, the same approaches, and the same aircraft. And with that, there's currently no gene therapy that allows FedEx pilots or cargo pilots to be nocturnal as opposed to passenger pilots. So our job as pilots is to manage risk, and we do it every day with weather, with problems associated with dispatch, with malfunctions, emergencies along the way. And along with regulations and training and equipment to help us, we mitigate those risks. And lately, through our human factors training, we focus on teamwork and pilot monitoring skills.
The cargo environment is obviously a little different than the passengers. Can you touch on that just a bit?
Yeah, cargo is primarily a hub and spoke system form, whereas passengers tend to be point to point. And that draws a disparity when comparing the two because on average cargo pilots get about 27 block hours per month while passenger carriers accumulate 47 block hours per month. And what that really translates to is more time on task in the critical phases of flight, more approaches, more landings, so better proficiency.
Rich, we clearly move large quantities of dangerous goods. What impact does that have on us?
Well, as compared to passenger carriers, cargo carriers carry a wider variety and more volumes of dangerous goods. But we do it safely because there are regulations that require separation and volume constraints as well as packaging constraints. However, lithium batteries is a different animal. We have two major accidents associated with U.S. cargo carriers carrying lithium batteries and dangerous goods. And because lithium batteries does not have the same packaging requirements, the same separation requirements and volume requirements as other dangerous goods, we feel it's an unmitigated risk.
Do we have different interaction with the aviation infrastructure as a whole?
We do because of the times of day we fly and operate our aircraft into and out of the same airfields passenger carriers do. We'll show up before the tower is open and before firefighting and rescue equipment is available. So that allows a different risk level as compared to passenger.
An increased risk level.
Correct.
Fatigue has been a major consideration and a topic amongst all of us. Could you give us some insight into that?
Well, as the system form description that we used earlier, we fly into and out of a hub sort facility. So we tend to fly less block hours, but we have longer sit times as compared to passenger pilots. So our duties tend to be greater in length, but our block time tends to be shorter.
Does that lower the risk for them?
It does. Most of the time they're not flying on the backside of the clock in their window of circadian low. And when they go to their layover time, they're actually sleeping in that wackle, or as opposed to us working in that wackle. And when we go to rest, we're trying to sleep when our body's actually trying to stay awake.
So we're going into these moderate or medium to high CFIT risk airports at a lower sense of awareness or greater fatigue.
Correct. So when you add the accumulation of flying at night, flying into non-tower airfields, maybe it's your third or fourth or even fifth night, that cumulative risk is a very different risk profile than a passenger carrier would experience.
I've heard you mention the good study in the past. I don't really know what that is. Could you explain that to us, please?
In the Aviation Rulemaking Committee that led to Part 117, they referenced the good study as part of why they came to the conclusions they did. And essentially, as you work through a day and you accumulate hours of work, your risk profile increases as you get past 8 hours of work. So as you approach 12 hours of work, you're twice as likely to have an accident as if you were working 8 hours. And then as you pass 13 hours of work, you go up to as much as 5 times as likely to have an accident as opposed to 8 hours.
What about security?
Well, we have concerns about security because of who has access to our aircraft on the ramps and who has access to our cockpits while we're operating. And that's different than the passenger carriers because they have hardened doors on all their aircrafts, and their common strategy is based on 3 things: the people, the training, and the hardened doors. So we don't have all of that. There's no mandate for us to have training as it is with the passengers, and certainly we don't have all of our aircraft with hardened doors. So it's a different risk profile with them, with that as well.
This may be a good time to ask about animal handlers and horse charters, for example, on our aircraft with non-hardened doors or non-IRCD.
Right. We don't have a great sense of the background investigations that are associated with individuals that have access to our cockpits. We have to assume that their country gives our country information on their criminal history, and so when we don't really have a sense of what that looks like or how well that's done, we don't have confidence in it. And there's a disparity, a friction point with the regulation associated with who actually has access to our cockpits. And we're working through that with the TSA at this time.
I know the FOM discusses that jump seaters must read and understand English. Does that apply to animal handlers?
That does. They have to be able to follow our instructions in case we need to evacuate the aircraft.
Chuck, how are we at FedEx here affected by these safety statistics?
The statistics I was talking about earlier are industry-wide statistics, but if you look at our record over the last 30 years, we've obviously had our share of major accidents. So, it's a concern, and we're engaged with management. We've been working through the problems there. We've also been working through the problems with regulatory and legislative solutions. But, we know that we have increased exposure due to fatigue, weight and balance issues, dangerous goods, lithium batteries, going into non-controlled airports. We have a host of issues that raise, our risk. And, we're trying to work on all those things.
And those items have been discussed with management?
They have. Recently, we've had several meetings, but we recently held a meeting with upper management, and they came and briefed us on the steps they're taking, in particular with lithium batteries. And, guys have heard us talk about PELS bags that management has spoken of to put over palletized cargo. They are deploying equipment now which will make it easier to put those bags in place. Those bags weigh more than 100 pounds. So there's some difficulty handling the things and getting them on the pallets. So they're basically putting out equipment out that will help with that. So we should start seeing evidence of that deployment out in the field. And anybody out there that gets pictures of this, I'd like to have them. So because we'd like to see this going into place. Other things management's told us they're doing in regard to lithium batteries, and circling back around real quick, obviously we got some relief from the ICAO, which amounted to a temporary ban on passenger aircraft for lithium batteries. Now that of course increased our risk because more of those batteries now are going to come onto us since they can't go in passenger bellies. The other parts of that ICAO regulation were 30% charge limitation for ship batteries. This helps, takes the potential down. And they also banned Section 2 overpacking practice, which had become common. FedEx management further shared with us that they have other policies they're putting in place as we speak to go further than the ICAO regulations with our own customers. And we're not at liberty right now to really discuss that. It's something that's not fully implemented yet, and I know as soon as it's in place, I expect management to communicate that. But we're pleased with those developments, and we're happy to hear that they're moving in those directions.
Well, I know we all look forward to hearing more on that. Recently, the MEC decided to adopt one level of safety. Could you explain what that is and what that means to us as crew members?
You know, right now, what one level of safety represents is science-based fatigue mitigation, duty time rules. We have a hard time imagining why cargo pilots' physiology would be any different than passenger pilots. So fatigue is fatigue. Doesn't matter what airplane you're in, where you're going, it's fatigue. So we think that one set of rules should really cover everyone. Now we know that 117 has issues. We know there are parts of 117 that we're not enamored with, and certainly the company's not enamored with. We also realize there are parts of 117 that recognize safety solutions to fatigue issues. So basically, we had been kind of sitting on the sideline for the last several years with this. The MEC, with the Boxer Amendment, when it came forward by IPA and the Teamsters Aviation Unit, supporting that, felt that we needed to be in the discussion. We needed a part of this. So the idea being that we don't expect anytime soon there's going to be a legislative or a regulatory change. We just don't see it coming. The same problem that's existed was why we were carved out in the beginning was they said the cost of one of our accidents in life and money was not enough to justify the regulation. That hasn't changed. So therefore, we don't see that the Earth hasn't moved. This problem still exists. But all it would take is one accident. Much like Colgan kind of made everybody aware of the problem in the regionals, and this whole 117 kind of came out of that. It's our belief that if there were one very unfortunate accident, that this would come under quick review, and now you might be subject to a political outcome and a cry to say, hey, we've got to fix this. We don't want to enter the discussion at that point.
Game.
You bet. We want to get ahead of this.
Chuck, recently ALPA put out an Environmental Standards Committee newsletter that highlighted several important safety issues. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Well, you bet. Captain Bob Avery, of course, heads up that committee, and Bob is a diehard advocate chasing this issue.
And we love him for that.
Yes, we do. And but Bob uncovered a lot of things when he was working in a management role to clean up the aircraft. Obviously, questions about air quality, water quality, oxygen mask hygiene, toilet hygiene. I mean, there's a laundry list there. We, with Bob, went and briefed upper management with our concerns. They are, in fact, meeting to determine what actions are going to take to mitigate these problems. And all indications, at least from where we're sitting right now, are that management's taking this seriously, and we're hopeful to get these aircraft cleaned up. So that's where we are with that, Jim.
That's good news, Chuck. Thank you. Rich, you talked about your participation at an FAA Cargo Focus Team meeting. What's going on with that?
The FAA Cargo Focus Team was birthed out of the National Air Cargo 747 accident in Bagram, Afghanistan. And essentially they were attempting to carry MRAPs, or just think of mine-resistant vehicles weighing about 24 to 38,000 pounds. They had 5 of them on board, strapped down. And unfortunately, with the takeoff, the very aft MRAP came loose and penetrated the pressure bulkhead and damaged the jack screw, and the aircraft became unflyable. So we lost 7 professionals that day. But the Cargo Focus Team then went to work, and what they uncovered was the cargo industry has not had very good oversight for some 40 years in terms of weight and balance and special cargo loading. So what we see them doing is reviewing all Part 121 operators' weight and balance programs and the special cargo requirements for transport. And with this National Air Cargo accident, the engineering outcome of the investigation said they had most needed or could carry one MRAP vehicle. And each of those had about 24 to 26 tie-down straps, and the engineering analysis revealed they needed to have slightly over 100 per vehicle. So there was a lot of lack of oversight and a lack of attention given to the cargo industry for this long period of time, and so that's becoming apparent, and it ties in with a lot of the other things that we've been talking about.
Jim, let me cut in real quick on this because I attended this briefing with the Cargo Focus team, and they are conducting audits on every cargo carrier, all 79, and it's going to take them well into the 2020s to complete these audits. And from that, they'll get a better sense of how far the drift has gone with a lot of these policies and procedures. What we came away with was an appreciation that when cargo is not loaded in a container or put on a pallet, in other words, when that cargo is tied to the floor of the aircraft, and mostly when we do this type of thing, it's going to be, military type charters or other charter work. But the takeaway for us was if you're operating an airplane that's in that situation, get the load plan, get a copy of it, go back and have them show you that it's tied down properly. I mean, that is something you can do as a crew. The other thing we came away is they think a lot of incidents are unreported, a lot of weight and balance anomalies they just aren't aware of. So they're asking us, if you feel a load shift while you're taxiing, anything goes on, they want you to report it. Put it into the ASAP system. We need to become aware of what's occurring here. And they're coming out, they're looking at this, they're going to issue ultimately some new op specs to define how to do special cargo, that type of cargo that's tied down, special handling, because they've also discovered a lot of stuff is placed inside ULDs or inside belly compartments that's quite heavy, or maybe the shape of it would make it prone to puncture the compartment. There are a lot of things now they're going to restrict, and they're going to place more requirements for securing these things than what we've had in the past. FedEx is aware of this, and I know they're working on it, so we'll stay in touch with them. We'll try and keep up on this, but the bottom line is if you see one of these situations out there, you need to pay attention.
Rich, did we miss anything with you, sir?
Well, I would just want to characterize the things that we've talked about, whether it be fatigue, whether it be cargo loading, whether it be dangerous goods and lithium batteries, or flying into non-tower ops and non-ARF supported fields. That adds up to a cumulative risk profile that we don't really have a good sense of. And whether that really ties to the higher accident rate is a question that we need to have answered.
Chuck, any final words from you?
Well, I'd like to second what Rich just said, and I will tell the guys that we're doing everything we can to try and strengthen a partnership with FedEx, because our most immediate relief for any of these problems is going to be between us and the company. If we're going through regulatory or legislative channels, it takes forever to get relief there. The outcome's uncertain. The best, quickest solutions are always going to be with our company. We've approached them. We've been in several meetings now trying to develop what we would think would be a more effective partnership in safety. And I feel reasonably confident that we're going to get there. I certainly have reasons to believe that, but we're still kind of on a wait and see on a few of these plans. So that's it, and I just ask the guys to stay engaged and keep watching what we're doing here. And if they see problems out there on the line, let us know. We need to know what's going on.
Rich, Chuck, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for viewing this video. If you need more information, please visit fdx.alpa.org or contact your block rep. We'll see you again soon.